CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest.
Hey everybody, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. I am Justin, and joining me, as always, my co-anchor, The Rock, is...
Thanks for all... is synonyms the right word? I don't even know. I'm so bad at that stuff.
I'm just trying to not make it the same fucking intro the whole time. Add some I don't know.
Flair.
Oh yeah, flair. Thank you. I'll take it. Flair.
You need 37 pieces of flair or you're getting fired.
Right, yes.
This is Derek Cronus. I'm sticking with that for now. I like it.
I thought I mulled over, we get introduce some characters that I wouldn't say we're familiar with, but we know of, putting in my name as Jocelyn, but that doesn't sound right.
You could be Lady Genvy.
I could, except I'm not a Gen.
I know. I just put a J in front of Envy, that's all.
Yeah, I know. So I'm sure something will come up.
I just happened to get lucky that, oh God, do I want to say this? There was a D there right away early.
You said it anyway, and I caught it. It's the little things, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Little
some comedic value
out there for it. But
yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess how you been? It's been a week.
Good and I guess not great at the same time. This last weekend I got to kind of kick off my hockey season, which was fun. Played in a tournament. It's my third year playing in it. My dad plays in it too. We've never been on the same team. There's some other players that have family members, and we're not the only ones who have never been on the same team. They just seem to split up family members onto different teams. But this was the first year that we didn't play each other. But there's 6 teams. You play 3 games, so it's not there's a winner's bracket and a loser's bracket. It's just a win is worth 2 points, a loss is nothing, a tie is 1. So we went undefeated on the weekend. We went 2-0-1. Another team went 3-0. So we got second place. But it was a lot of fun. Yesterday was kind of a rough day. We had to put down Kelly's dad's dog. Kelly's dad died a little over a year ago, and the dog's been with her stepmom, and she's moving into assisted living later this week, and we just didn't have any other options. And so he went down about an hour ago this time yesterday. So it was pretty sad. Luckily we were able to do it at home. We didn't have to bring him to the vet, so he's all scared and everything. But
Sure.
It was definitely rough. It sucked a lot. I still feel really guilty about it, but I don't know. It sucks. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it always does suck. We're in a similar boat with actually 2 of our animals. We have a dog that's 14 years old and clearly has cancer in the mouth, and but she's still eating and she's still drinking. So
She was such a sweetheart when I got to meet her, though.
Yeah,
it's hard to make that call, though.
It really is. But then we also have a cat that has been peeing blood. So he's got some crystals of some kind. So depending on
Did I meet that cat? Or was that one that hid?
Yeah, the tuxedo one.
Okay.
Tuxedo.
Oh, that sucks. That's not any fun.
Yeah. So
I feel for you. So tonight, everybody's looking at this. The dog's name was Kuro, which is apparently black in Japanese, as far as I know. And I'm drinking a black lager, so this one's for you, Kuro.
Cheers. Sorry you had to go through that, dude.
There's, like I said, it's a bummer, but there's a lot of good coming out of the situation too. So it's hard to look past that. I'm not an overly religious person by any means, but I kind of choose to believe that. He's with Kelly's dad now, so.
Right. They're playing ball with each other,
Yep.
playing catch.
How about you? How is your week gone?
It's been a little rougher. School started up for us today, so I've just been handling small fires over and over again. So, but
Oh, they already started, huh?
yeah, they usually start a week before Labor Day.
Is that including your kids also?
No, they
Or
start
just the high school kids?
just the high school kids at my work.
Gotcha. Yeah, but I'll have a freshman on Tuesday, next Tuesday. So, yeah, that'll be wild. And then the other will be 8th grade on Thursday. So high school starts 2 days before.
Getting up there, sir. What are you going to do with all that time off once they graduate?
No idea.
I would imagine by that time we'll probably be we'll be close to finishing up the Books of the Fallen.
Yeah, I don't know where we'll be at. Somewhere in the thick of it.
Watch it. We're probably going to be only on Midnight Tides.
in another 4 years? I don't think so.
No. But, all right. Well, how about we end the depressing banter and hit right into Chapter 1 of Memories of Ice here.
Yeah, I'm sure this will be a very delightful and cheery book with no sadness at all.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
So I didn't really get from too much of that in this first chapter, I don't think so.
I mean, there was a lot of things to pick out. Some of it was recap, but yeah, I guess we'll get to there when we get there.
Sounds good.
All right. But, before we get started in today's episode, we'd like to take a moment to thank and recognize Silverstone's Books. Please check out their website, silverstonesbooks.com, where they have a large selection of fantasy, sci-fi, and horror books with the option of many signed copies at very reasonable prices. The store carries a large number of indie authors, so help us help them in supporting self-published authors. Also, they've been gracious enough to give us a promo code for 10% off your next order. That code is DJ Quest. So check out their site and pick up a book and save a little cash while supporting some indie authors.
Yeah, and also last night, I think it was last night, they started a end of summer sale on science fiction books. So science fiction books, I believe, are 25% off. I don't imagine that coupon would stack with ours. I guess I don't know how long that's going on for. So by the time you hear this, that summer sale may be over already, or it might not. I'm not sure. But just throwing that out there.
Sure, absolutely.
And oh shit, Justin, we suck. Our patrons, in order of subscription, we have Jan the Picker of Pies, Luciana Etrigan, Ryan the Topological, Damien the Rock of Faces, Nate Fiddle Me This, Shield Anvil Dylan, Quartermaster, Master Sergeant Lieutenant Parker, and we also have a new patron now, David. Forgot to update our list, but I remembered when I saw the list. I was like, oh shit. So David, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us here. Excited to have you and hope you're enjoying things. Also, one of our other patrons, Nate, he has started his own podcast with one of his friends. It's called the Podcast of the Fallen. You can find them probably anywhere you find us as well. So check them out. I've not listened to their most current episode yet, but they're covering things at a little quicker pace than we are. I don't know if he has a Twitter set up yet. So I don't know where you can find him as far as socials go, but all the usual places you can find him as far as his content.
That's awesome. That is absolutely superb.
Yeah, it's exciting, and it's fun. They're just about done with Gardens of the Moon already. I think for the most part they're kind of covering like a sub book each episode is how it seems to be.
Gotcha.
Um,
So kind of like a 10 very big books, right? Didn't they do each sub book at first?
I don't remember. I guess I listened to their Dead House Gate stuff right after we finished, and I don't remember if that's how it was set up or not.
Gotcha. Well, Nate, or Fiddle Me This, congratulations. I hope the podcast is going well, and hopefully we can collaborate sometime.
Definitely. Since I was too lazy to type out the epigraph for this subbook, would you like me to read it? Or do you have your book handy and do you want to read it?
Yeah, I've got my book handy. I'd be happy to read it.
Sure. And then I'll take the other one and then just roll right into the first section here.
Yeah. 5 mages, an adjunct, countless imperial demons, and the debacle that was Jerusalem all served to publicly justify the outlawry proclaimed by the Empress on Dujek One Arm and his battered legions. That this freed One Arm and his host to launch a new campaign, this time as an independent military force, to fashion his own unholy alliances, which were destined to result in a continuation of the dreadful sorcery and Phalalde on Genebacus, is one, might argue, incidental. Granted, the countless victims of that devastating time should Hood grant them the privilege, voice an entirely different opinion. Perhaps the most poetic detail of what would come to be called the Panian Wars was, in fact, a precursor to the entire campaign. The casual, indifferent destruction of a lone stone bridge by the Jaghut tyrant on this ill-fated march to Jerusalem. Imperial campaigns, the Panian War, 1194 to 1195. Volume 4, Genebacus. Imgrin, Talabant.
Nice job, man. Yeah, it made me like why would the destruction of a bridge play such a significant role? But I guess we'll find that out as we go here.
Absolutely.
All right, our epigraph for the chapter here. Memories are woven tapestries hiding hard walls. Tell me, my friends, what hue your favored thread, and I in turn will tell the cast of your soul. Life of dreams, Ilber's the hag. 1164th year of burned sleep, 2 months after the Darujistan Fete, 4th year of the Panian Domin, Telan year of the second gathering. All right, here we go. The bridge's Gadrobi limestone blocks were scattered and broken in the bank. It looked as though a god had swatted and smashed the bridge in a gesture of contempt. Gruntle thought this was only a half step from the truth. The news made its way back to Darujistan less than a week after it had been destroyed, shortly after the first caravans had reached it and found it wrecked. Rumors spread of an ancient demon unleashed by the Malazans with the intent of destruction of Darujistan. Gruntle spat in the grass along the wagons. He had his doubts about the stories, even though things had been odd the night of the fete a couple months back. And despite the fact that he was hammered and wouldn't have remembered anyways, there had been enough credible witnesses for the sightings of dragons, demons, and the terrifying descent of moon spawn to be believed. Though if any conjuring with the power to rip apart an entire countryside had reached the city, and since the city had not been reduced to a pile of rubble, or no worse for the wear of a citywide celebration, clearly nothing had happened. Though the Gadrobi Hills were not particularly restless, it could have been an earthquake. Perhaps Byrne had shifted in her eternal slumber. In any case, the truth was now truth before him, or rather did not stand, but lay scattered to Hood's Gate and beyond. The fact remained that whatever games the gods played at, it was dirt poor, hardworking bastards like him that paid the price in the end. The old ford 30 paces up the river was back in use, and it hadn't been used in centuries, and with the unseasonable rains had turned the bank into a muddy mess. Wagon after wagon crowded the crossing while more waited out on the trails, while the temper of the wagon drivers, merchants, and guards had their tempers tested. For 2 days now they waited to cross. Harlow had waded out to what was left of the bridge to fish. Stony, I guess I'm not sure which way you said that. I'll go with Stony. Menacus had led the group to a wagon selling ale at extortion-level prices. They were supposed to go to an inn just out Saltone, but that was tough shit for the innkeeper. If things continued on as they were, soon there would be a market here. then a town. At which point, some official from Darujistan would come and decide it was a good time to rebuild the bridge, which would take another decade or so. Or, if the town became a concern, they'd just send a tax collector. News from the other side of the river was that the merchant, Manqui, had burst a blood vessel on his head and keeled over dead, which was apparently more typical for merchants. However, his merchant, Master Karuli, seemed to be different, and it even threatened his general disgust with merchants. Though Karuli had enough oddities about him that Gruntle even wondered if he was a merchant. None of that really mattered, though, because coin was coin, and Karuli paid better than most. Hell, he could be Prince Arard for all he really cared. A man shouted at him, breaking him from his daydreams. Gruntle shouted back, saying he was either the worst merchant in the world or a poor man's servant. The man replied that he was a manservant, and his name was Emancipor Reese, and that his masters were not poor, but they had been on the road for a very long time. Gruntle said he believed him as he didn't recognize his accent, which was a feat in itself, and wanted to know what he wanted. Reese said his masters wanted to talk to him, and they were not camped far away. Gruntle said he would need to check with his master. Reese said that was fine, and to relay the message that they were not trying to steal him away from his current employer. Karuli told him to go, and as he was curious about the man's two masters, and to keep his eyes and ears open. Karuli told Gruntle on his way back to grab Stony, as she's had too much to drink and was becoming argumentative. Gruntle said it might be best if he gets her now then, before she stabs someone. Karuli said to send Harlow then. Gruntle said he would probably just join in. Karuli said he spoke highly of both of them. What gives? Gruntle said the three of them working together was just as good as double that number when it comes to protecting a master and his merge. That's why they're so expensive. Karuli said that was true and told him to inform his co-workers if there were no disturbances, there would be bonuses. Harlow was already on his way back with a small fish and a proud smile. Gruntle said it was a sorry excuse for a fish. He could inhale it up one nostril. Harlow said they could have fish-flavored soup. Gruntle said, great, mud-flavored soup. He would pass. He told Harlow Stony was getting drunk. Harlow said he didn't hear any fighting. Gruntle said as long as it stayed that way, there would be bonuses. He watched Harlow run off with his arms that were too big for his body. He turned to Reese and told him to lead on.
Nice little introductory section, right?
Yeah. I didn't have any notes kind of to talk about this just because it's just kind of giving you the picture. I mean, it's an area we're already vaguely familiar with. Maybe not, the specific creek side or riverside or whatever you want to call it, but I mean, we've been in this area before. And now we've just got this new guy, Gruntle, which is kind of a fun name. Like,
yeah.
Is he just like grumpy and shit? I don't know. I have liked him so far. And then Emancipor Reese. I'm wondering, like, do you have a headcanon for him yet? Maybe not necessarily just through this first section, but after reading this first chapter. And I don't know how big of a role he's going to have in the rest of this book. I would guess probably not huge, but I have like a headcanon for like who I visualize, and I'm just wondering if we're kind of on the same page, if you had something.
I mean, I'm getting Poost-like vibes, if that's where you're going.
Not
Just
at all from
like
me, no.
Older, kind of balding.
Yes.
Like
yes and yes on that. Yes,
maybe
I agree
like
with those.
long, thinning white hair, and then he's got like the bald spot on top, and then just the hair at the back. It's kind of what I imagined, I guess.
So what I in reading this chapter and his dialogue, I think it was probably the second time I read this chapter, it just clicked in my head. But I was like, it's fucking Michael Caine as Alfred from Batman. Like this is who I'm hearing. Like and it just makes sense to me.
Gotcha.
So,
okay. I can see that. That might become my new headcanon. Yeah. Yep.
So
that makes sense. One of the things that I picked out was, when Gruntle was kind of, I don't know if it was just inner monologue or just, he wasn't really saying anything. He wasn't really thinking anything. But it was said that perhaps Byrne had shifted in her eternal slumber. And, I think that, this kind of gives away who Byrne is. And being that we get a lot of this whole burn sleep thing. And I think it's supposed to represent like what would be our Mother Earth, And, you know, at first I kind of went along with the whole BS or bullshit thing based on a lot of the conversing that we had with, Mr. Erickson. I'm kind of skeptical about him even saying that now. Or even if he has that mentality, even in the slightest bit, because his whole premise is history and uncovering the past. And, I feel like timelines are somewhat, if not pretty related to those themes. So I don't know why he would be so nonchalant about timelines. But anyway, I think that burn sleep represents the time that the earth stopped forming, like a representation of the earth forming before life began, sort of thing. You know what I mean? So I think that's what he means by burn sleep. But again, I don't watch his interviews because I don't want anything spoiled. So I really could be way off. I'm just going on based upon kind of my interpretation of his writing and what little we know based on our conversation with him.
Right. Sorry, I'm listening to you. I'm just kind of like, I've just noticed in my document here that I don't have even any of your comments that you made. I cannot see them, and I don't know why.
Interesting. Well, then I guess it'll be a surprise.
Yeah. I don't think I had any when I was writing this on either of my sections. I did have one, and I mean, I remember what it is for the most part, but I don't know what the hell happened. Anyways, I guess I will just deal with it. And like you said, it'll be a surprise. That's fine.
Fair enough. So, yeah, I guess that's just kind of like my thought on the whole burn sleep thing. I think that, it represents some type of point in time when
I would agree.
when the earth stopped forming or when this land stopped doing something,
I think that makes sense.
But what did you think of the bridge? No, I think it's interesting that Darujistan isn't rebuilding it, and Gruntle is sitting here being all like, "Well, if this continues, because clearly, things are at a standstill, right? Like these merchants
pretty freaking close.
Can't get into Darujistan because of the bridge. So it's one of those things where how are people getting their goods? Are they coming out and just like swimming across to buy what they need to buy, or?" And he even mentions it himself that like if it keeps up, then we're gonna end up with our own damn town here.
Yeah, I wonder how it's gonna affect things later on. I guess when I was reading this, it was more from the bigger struggle was the merchants leaving Darujistan to go out into the rest of the world. Not necessarily so much as them coming in, though. I mean, that will play a role also, I'm sure, but. Yeah, it sounds like the crossing is a mess. They've had a lot of rain, and so it's a muddy hill to try and climb up out of with your wagon. And so I don't know if they're just waiting for it to dry out a little bit and the water to go down. But yeah. It doesn't sound like fun.
No, not at all. Yeah, I guess that works both. I didn't even think of the other way. Like people can't get out either. So there we go.
Or they got to go like a really long way around or something.
Yeah. I guess, do you remember or do you recall in Gardens of the Moon, Reyes smashing this bridge?
I feel like I vaguely do. I feel like I remember, I guess I don't remember even who it was specifically, but some of the characters like arriving at the bridge and crossing it. So I'm assuming it's that bridge. I feel like I remember Reyes destroying it.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just because I'm being told he did, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, it's okay. I'm a little disappointed. I didn't get a chance to reread Gardens of the Moon before delving into Memories of Ice. So I'm always like, did that happen? I'm just going to assume it did, and then if I reread it, I'll be like, oh, okay. That wasn't in there. Cool. Good to know.
That would have been, I guess I'm sure you could have done it, but I feel like that would have been a pretty big undertaking to reread Gardens.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I just went through like 100 pages a night or something, which is pretty dense for that book, but
yeah,
I'd be done in like a week. But also, when I was reading Wheel of Time, it would take me about maybe 9 days to a week to 2 weeks to read a book. So
I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I could read 100 pages like in a night. Um, I feel like that would be tough for me.
yeah,
That's just me, though.
fair enough. Well, what I guess yeah, I didn't have much for this section either. But it felt really kind of like establishing any things and setting up characters and the beginning of a book.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like Harlow's like Donkey Kong. Like he's just got these arms that are too big for his like smaller body. Like random. Sorry,
No,
I'm
no, that's
done.
fine. I think Gruntel's comment about the fish that he caught was pretty funny. And there's a lot of really subtle humor in here that's made me giggle quite a bit in this chapter. So when we get there, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, and even in just this first section where he's like, "Yeah, I could suck that thing up my nose," and I'm like, "Oh, mud flavored soup, not eating it."
Right, yeah. Exactly. But hey, I'm cool with moving on if you are.
Absolutely.
All right. The carriage was massive, a house on wheels. 4 oxen grazed about in a corral 10 paces downwind from the camp. Privacy obviously mattered to the manservant's masters. A mangy cat watched as Reese and Gruntle approached. Gruntle asks Reese if that was his cat. Emancipator Reese said that it was. Gruntle replied that any wax witch or alchemist could treat the mange on that cat. The manservant seemed uncomfortable and said that he'd be sure to look into it. Reese nodded towards the hills and announced to Gruntle that Master Bauchelain was headed their direction. Gruntle turned and studied the man. Bauchelain spoke in a soft voice and greeted Gruntle by saying that even though they are aware of his employer's prying, and while they don't typically reward the spying, in this case he'll make an exception, and Gruntle shall accompany him. Bauchelain tells his manservant that his cat is suffering palpitations, and that he should comfort the cat. Gruntle rested his hands on the pommel of his sword, eyes thinning as he looked at Bauchelain. Bauchelain is heard saying, "Well, Captain." Gruntle made no move, though. Bauchelain assures Gruntle that his employer is eager that he comply with the request. However, if the captain was too chicken shit, he could ask his employer to hold his hand for the duration of the adventure. Gruntle asked if Bauchelain ever fished. Bauchelain questioned this, and Gruntle went on explaining that the ones that rise up to any old bait are young and don't ever get older. And if Bauchelain wants a rise, then he best fish elsewhere. Bauchelain's smile was dry and said that the captain reassured him. And shall they proceed? Gruntle told him to lead on. Along the way, the two have a conversation about various things, ranging from the dead grass, from the fire that burned these lands, to the captain's education, which made Gruntle stand out amongst the other caravanserai, as he was one to use his brain. They rounded a battered hillside and came to the edge of a fresh crater. Gruntle saw that a man sat at the edge of this large crater. He rose and turned to them. Bauchelain introduces Gruntle to his partner, Corporal Broach. Bauchelain had triggered unease in Gruntle, but seeing Corporal sent ripples of fear down his spine. The feeling was purely instinctual, as if Bauchelain and Corporal emanated some type of tainted aura. He muttered under his breath that no wonder the cat had palpitations. He pulled his gaze from Broach and studied the crater. Bauchelain moved to stand next to him and asked if the captain understood what he was seeing. Captain said that he was no fool and that it was a hole in the ground. Bauchelain said that he was amusing, and then goes on to explain that it was a barrow, and within it was a chained jagad. Gruntle was caught up on the word "was," and voiced it aloud. Bauchelain explained that the Malazan Empire meddled in a league with the Talani Mass. They succeeded in freeing the creature, or so he gathered. Gruntle asked if Bauchelain believed the tales, and if the Jaghut was released, what in Hood's name happened to it. Bauchelain explained that they wondered the same. They are strangers to this continent, and until recently, they have never heard of the Malazan Empire or the city of Jerujistan. During their brief stay there, they heard stories of the events that had just passed, dragons, demons, and assassins. The Azath house named the Finnest, which cannot be entered but seems to be occupied already. He explains to Gruntle that they paid it a visit. Moreover, they heard tales of the floating city that was Moonspawn that had floated over Jerusalem. Gruntle explains that he saw it with his own eyes not a day's past. Bauchelane sighed and guessed that they had just missed it. He states that he gathers that Atist Andi Lord rules Moonspawn. Gruntle simply replied that he didn't like gossip. After a hardened stare from Bauchelane, Gruntle asks if the hole was all they wanted to show him. Bauchelane raised an eyebrow and said showing him the barrel was not precisely the reason for bringing him here, and they wanted to go down into the barrow. Gruntle blesses them with Opan's luck and then turns away. Bauchelane says that his employer would urge him to accompany them. They converse a few more lines to each other before Gruntle swung around again to head back towards the trail. Gruntle stopped and said that if they wanted to see Moonspawn, then now was their chance. Both Bauchelane and Corbel walked in his direction and now stood on each side of him. The two talk about Moonspawn and its potential direction, to which Bauchelane equates this to Moonspawn's tilt. Gruntle explained that this actually happened because of the mages at the Battle of Pale. Corbel now spoke and asked his partner if he thinks the Lord has sensed them. Bauchelane frowned and said that this should be a conversation left for when they were in private. Corbel said very well, and then asked if his partner wanted to kill this captain. Gruntle stepped back and at the ready with his sword half drawn. Bauchelane assures the captain that his partner has simple notions. Gruntle didn't believe it and made a comment to that extent. Scowling, he walked away back towards the trail. Under his breath, he whispered to his employer that he thinks his bonus was well earned today. Moments later, he moved beyond sight of the crater and saw that Bauchelane and Corbel had their backs turned to him. He watched as they entered the hole. Sighing, Gruntle swung around again and made his way back towards camp. As he reached the road, he gazed towards Moonspawn, and under his breath spoke to the Lord of Moonspawn, hoping that he did indeed sense Bauchelane and Corbel Broach's presence. Walking down the road, he saw Reese petting the cat. Inside the captain's head, considering the cat didn't have mage at all.
Well, who the fuck are these two guys?
You don't know?
I was thinking about this as you were talking, reading this section, because where the hell are they from if they haven't even heard of the Malazan Empire? Because they seem to be pretty big. Or, I mean, we know there's a handful of continents on this planet, so maybe it's just even bigger than we realize. And then I'm like, I wonder if there's fucking, like, time travel.
I mean, in the prologue, they brought down a foreign god, so maybe.
Yeah, I'm just like, this is going to be so stupid. It's going to be super far, like, left field. This is well beyond your left field, Justin. But I'm sitting here thinking about it. Like, what if it's Cotillion and Amanus, like, when they were younger or something? I don't fucking know.
I mean, this is 2 months after the Fete, so I don't think that it would be Amanus or Cotillion.
But if it was a younger version of themselves from some other period of time, I don't know. Like I said, it was way the fuck out there. But because one of the guys is described as, like, tall and skinny-ish, and the other one's described as, like, I mean, he at least said he had a round face. I guess that doesn't mean he's fat, I guess, by any means. I was like, oh, that would be pretty crazy. And I'd like, oh, that just sounds stupid. Yeah, I don't know who the hell these guys are, but they're interesting.
So their names aren't ringing any type of bells, even though you've bought books about them?
Well, I know there's the novellas are like stories about them, which I assume would take place before where we're at now, is what I would assume. Their adventures, and I guess maybe some of them take place after too, but I don't know.
So what I understood was that Blood Follows should technically chronologically be read before Memories of Ice. So that will probably give us some backstory, I would imagine, when we get to that next. But
I guess to answer your question, yes, I did recognize their names from these other books. I didn't know that's what you're going for.
Gotcha. I
Yes,
thought that
I do.
these guys were like completely like new to you, and I'm like, wait a minute, dude.
No. But I mean, it doesn't really tell me who they are, though. Like,
Well, no. I always get the feeling that they're like traveling alchemists or something like that. Even though that's
well,
probably not right, but that's like the feeling I get, you know. They're like they're collecting and investigating like oddities is kind of the headcanon I have around them.
you think they're like fucking circus ringmasters or something? Like they've just got like, yeah, the they're gonna get Harlow and he's gonna be their strong man or something with his ape arms. They're looking for their woman with a mustache, bearded lady. I don't know.
I mean, it very well could be. Yeah. I don't know if I would go. I think that's still a little on the left side of the field. There,
I'm just having fun with it, man. Just leaning hard into it.
yeah, go nuts, man. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was cool that they got introduced, and I'm like, okay, I knew that they were introduced in this book. I just didn't know when. So it was kind of cool that the first chapter introduces them. So I would only imagine that they get caught up in whatever's going on here. So yeah,
They must have some like magical abilities if they're, asking if they got, excuse me, if he's wondering if Animander Rake sensed them for Moonspawn.
right. I was thinking the same thing. I guess what I really enjoyed throughout the section, Gruntle and Boschelane's like banter between each other, and especially with the whole fish thing. And Gruntle explains that that any old bait are young enough, don't ever get older, and he definitely didn't take any of Boschelane's tricks or manipulation here. And I guess I'm just curious to see if this Gruntle character sticks till the end of the book.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, he seems like he's got the makings of a mainstay.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the initial impression that I got. I mean, I thought that about Culp too, but where did that end up him? So
Dead.
yep, dead.
Well, we know not everybody dies. So.
That's true. That's true. But also, what did Erickson tell us in the interview?
A lot of things. I guess I don't remember what you're talking about specifically now.
I think that he said that he ended up killing off a lot of people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember. Yes, I didn't kill everybody.
Right. Yep. Exactly. So
It's reassuring.
I guess we'll just have to see how that goes. But also kind of going on to the whole, they must be emanating something, some type of magical energy, because Gruntle was, kind of uneased by Boshelin here, but even more so when he finally meets Corporal Broach. And I wonder why Gruntle is getting a bad feeling from them. Because me, as I'm reading this as a reader, I'm not getting that sense. Or it's just potentially it's because, things haven't been revealed yet about these two characters. But I don't know. How did you feel? Did you get the sense of unease as you were reading this chapter or these sections?
I did not understand his feelings towards them.
Gotcha. He just seems like very anxious and nervous about them. So he's picking up on something, which that I can agree to. I just don't see. I guess I can't empathize with his unease about them because I'm not getting
yet.
that vibe from him.
Maybe it's just. Since he knows they're from not around there, maybe that makes him uneasy. He doesn't know how to predict how they might react. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's definitely something more. I do find. I like how he described it as some type of tainted aura. So I don't know if they have the best intentions or not. I'm just picking out what I can.
Yeah, well, you do a good job of it.
Yeah, I try. The other thing that I thought was really funny in this section was the captain. I could just imagine him getting approached to this hole, and he's just like, when Boshelin is asking if he understood what he was seeing, and the captain's just like, "Yeah, I'm not a fool. It's a fucking hole in the ground,"
That was a good line for sure.
Yeah. And also, when they were talking about how the two travelers, I guess you could call them, visited the Azath house, which we knew was named the Finnest. I don't know if that was named in Gardens of the Moon, but if it wasn't, this is the part where we get a name to it.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was specifically named or not either.
I don't think so. But they were able to tell because it could not be entered, but it seems to be occupied already. And like Ralaknam and Vorkan, yeah. So
It'll be interesting. I wonder if we'll get any of that here.
yeah, it would be nice to see Ralak come back in some way, shape, or form. I'm not exactly sure when or how. I mean, I don't even have a left field prediction for that. I feel like they're probably traveling based on what we know about the Zath houses, right? Like, I know that it's pretty young, this Finnest house, so I would imagine that things are under construction, so to speak. So maybe they don't really have anywhere to go in there, but maybe they're its guardian. I don't know.
We'll have to read and find out.
Definitely we'll have to Rafo. But yeah, I mean, outside of those things, I mean, it was a very straightforward section. Lots of good interaction between Gruntle and Boshalane. I like Gruntle's sarcasm. Boshalane seems to be, I wouldn't say condescending, but he seems to be like direct in a way that maybe is oversimplified, if that makes sense.
He's kind of cold. I felt like cold and direct. I think direct was a good way to put it. Like he's not here to fuck around. He's just gonna tell you what he's gonna tell you.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess my big question with this whole section is why the hell does Gruntle? Why do they need Gruntle to accompany them?
I mean, the only thing that makes sense to me so far is that they like that he thinks for himself. So maybe it's because he's not a yes man.
Maybe
he's familiar with the area. Like they might see something and not recognize it as a danger, I guess. And he's going to be like, "Hold on, you dumbass! Don't step on that landmine." Something,
yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Or maybe it's just one of those things where they wanted a local's opinion on things because they're from out of town, and they wanted somebody who isn't necessarily just a grunt, but like you said, thinks for themselves and kind of can make educated opinions on things that they encounter or experience. Who really knows? I mean, I don't know if the answer is probably obvious and I'm just missing it, but it kind of seemed like, hey, you're going to come with us. Okay. Hey, there's a hole. Well, I'm not fucking going in there. Peace.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're only one chapter in, so we can't be too hard on ourselves yet.
No, not at all. Not at all. But outside of that, I didn't have anything big to talk about with that particular section. I thought it flowed really well. I enjoyed every sentence or every word of it. It was cool to get introduced to these characters, kind of some basic interactions. But yeah.
Right. Well, I guess I'll take my last section here before your actual behemoth of one.
Yep.
The wolf circled the unconscious mortal, keeping its only eye fixed on it. The Warren of Chaos had few visitors. Of them, humans were the rarest of all. The wolf had wandered this violent land for so long, the time could not be measured. Alone and lost for so long, its mind had reshaped itself. Very few would recognize the intelligence behind its feral look in its eyes, or eye, rather. But it was there all the same. The wolf continued to circle the human, continuing to keep its single eye focused on it. The wolf remembered almost nothing of what existed outside of chaos, or the mortals who worshipped it as if it were a god. But some sort of knowledge had come to it. Instinctive sensitivity that told of possibilities and potential that now existed because of this mortal. Though the wolf was still hesitant, there were risks and decisions that left the wolf shaking. The wolf circled closer, lone eye fixed on the mortal's face. This was a gift. Nothing else could explain what it discovered on the mortal's face. A mirrored spirit in every way. This was not an opportunity to be missed. Still, the wolf hesitated. Until a memory emerged in the mind's eye. A frozen image, faded with time. sufficient to close the spiral, and then it was done.
That was a good section.
It was short, and I didn't really understand it the first time I read it, I don't think.
I didn't either. It wasn't until I reread it that I'm like, okay, this makes a little more sense.
Anyways, this, I am pretty convinced this mortal is Talk, as he was thrown into the warren by asshole puppet. And yeah, I'm glad we get to talk about that guy again. So this, like, it's got to be him. I mean, this wolf's got one eye. It looks at this guy's face. He's only got one eye, like Talk. It's got to be Talk. And I think somehow this wolf is going to, like, embed part of itself into Talk or something. Like, he's going to meld his consciousness. I don't know. It's like an Animorphs thing.
But like a
I don't know.
reverse shapeshifter, like a reverse soul taken.
Something. Yeah. I don't really know how they're going to work together, or if it's something that'll be revealed later on. But like, I don't know who else it could be, because I mean, the amount of time that Talk is in this warren, I guess, is kind of unknown to us. And I know that kind of comes up in your last section here. All this other stuff happened, in Deadhouse Gates, and from when we left him in Gardens of the Moon. But I get the sense that time kind of, like, it says it's immeasurable in here. I mean, the wolf has been in here for so long, it's immeasurable. Time doesn't really matter. So all this other shit that we read happened, and it doesn't really matter. What's happening right now matters. This wolf made contact with him. I don't know what's going to come of it, but there's going to be some sort of, I think there's going to be some sort of coexistence coming from it.
I get that sense too. And from what I understand, about the timeline, whether that was intended or not, but I would imagine that at this point in time, 2 months after the Fete, that Kalam, Crocus, Absalar, and Moby haven't even reached 7 cities yet, because it took them about a year, from what I recall, to travel from Genabacchus to 7 cities.
Right. So, like, the time, yeah, it doesn't really matter.
No, not at all. But I would imagine, just from Talk's perspective, from what I recall of the events in Gardens of the Moon, is that Talk was thrown into this warren by asshole puppet. So I would imagine it has to have been like at least 6 to 8 weeks that he's been in this warren of chaos. Because I feel like that happened right before Reyes was released.
But we don't really know when this is, like, picking up. So this could be, like, happening congruently with everything else that happened. It doesn't necessarily have to be after.
What makes you think it's happening congruently?
There's not anything telling us otherwise.
I mean, there's a few things.
Not really while he's in this warren. He's just...
No.
I mean, I know, yeah, there's some stuff that comes up in your last section, but yeah, I don't... The amount of time that's passed, I don't think is super important.
Gotcha. No, I mean,
That's all.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But yeah, no, I going back to your original point, I definitely do think that I would agree with you that this wolf and Talk have somehow combined spirits, or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's maybe some overlap with this next section, but I mean, I guess it's not really that big of a deal. But I think that Talk was in the Warren of Chaos, and in some way, shape, or form, the wolf got him out of the Chaos Warren. I don't know if you agree or not, but
I guess I don't know that I agree or disagree. I guess I just kind of always felt like he was going to come out of it at some point, so I don't know if the wolf had a part in it. He could have. And I guess, to me, just reading it, that wasn't something I was hung up on, that the wolf got him out or not.
Sure. I think the wolf and Talk are supposed to help each other in some way. And if the wolf wouldn't have let him out of the Chaos Warren, then vision that he had in his mind, a memory, a frozen image, faded with time. So
To me, that passage there, the frozen image faded with time. I thought that was relating to like all like the Jaghut ice disappearing,
Very well could be.
melding, whatever terminology you want to use. But
Yeah. I think that at the end of the day, you and I can agree that there's some type of connection here. What physically or the details of this connection are still kind of eluding us, but I think at the bare bones, there's some type of connection there.
100%.
Cool. Well, it was a really cool passage. Like I said, really mysterious, but cool nonetheless.
Yeah, for sure. It was pretty cool. And then you get boned with this massive thing here.
Yep. So let me go ahead and we'll get started on the last section here. I feel like this episode is going by really quick. I don't know how I feel about that. But
I know what you mean.
yeah. His single functioning eye opened to see a pale blue sky. The scar tissue over his eye tingled with a maddening itch. Beneath him, hard stones and rocks dug into his back. He laid unmoving, trying to recall what had happened. He was flung into the warren, a sense of unease which he shared with his companion before being enveloped by the warren. Gano's Paran. He groaned and cursed the asshole puppet. Hairlock in his mind. His memory returned in a surge of fear. He rolled over and thought that this wasn't the Rivi Plain. A field of broken black glass stretched on all sides. Off to his left, a few hundred paces away, was a low mound. His throat was raw and his eyes stung. Coughing, Tok sat up. He saw his bow beside him and reached for it. It was apparent to him that his horse hadn't followed, and he was left with nothing besides the bow and his knife he had in his belt. He had been flung into the warren, and somehow time had been lost within it. Observing his string on his bow and how damaged it had been, he estimated that days, even weeks, had passed, even though his body told him otherwise. He climbed to his feet and wondered if he was still within the warren, or did it spit him back out? He began walking towards the lone mound that broke the monotony of its surroundings. As he arrived, he saw the rest of the barrows evenly spaced out around him, at the center, a larger one. Tok skirted around the first barrow and noted that it was holed, likely by looters. He paused for a moment to observe the depth of the hole. He decided that he didn't like it, and as the mounds themselves must have been a huge dome underneath. He paused to consider the unfortunate events that got him here. The deathly rain of moonspawn to mark some kind of beginning. Fire and pain, the death of an eye, the kiss that left a savagely disfigured scar. A ride north on the plain to retrieve Ajak Lorne, a skirmish with Barghast. Back in Pale, Lorne revived his old role as Claw Courier. Inside his mind, he tells himself to be honest. It wasn't really a courier, it was more like a spy. There had been trouble in Pale, Tattersail, and then Captain Paran. A flight and pursuit. He muttered to himself that this was just a fucking mess. Hairlock's ambush had swatted him into a warren. Inside his mind, he thought to himself that he lingered there, or so he thought. He snaps himself from this thought and starts to tell himself to think like a soldier again in this unwelcome land he was in. He resumed his trek to the center barrow. He coughed as he scrambled up the side. Once he was on top and had a good vantage point, he observed his surroundings and was able to distinguish a ruined tower to his left. The sky beyond glowed a sickly red. He gazed at the welt, and his eye started to itch. He thought to himself that this was sorcery, and he was beginning to hate it. He began to notice details of the barrow he stood on. The crater, he realized, was not the work of looters. Whatever had made it pushed up from the tomb, and violently. A moment of nervousness shook him before he told himself to shake it off. He recalls the Talani Mas, who had joined up with Lorne, and how it had split a Barghast like a Rivi Plains boar. Still studying the barrow, his thoughts remained on Lorne and Toole, and he wondered if they had succeeded in releasing the Jaghut from his burrow. He shivered at a thought about what was potentially released from the tomb, how desperate the mind would be at freedom. He would have guessed that the creature released from the barrel would likely be around. Thanks. There was no telling how much time had passed, but Tock's gut told him it had been years, even decades. Leaving the barrel, he headed to the ruined tower. About 40 paces from the tower, he nearly tripped over a corpse. He scowled down at the figure and asked what it was doing there. The Talani Mass said that he was waiting. Tock remembered the Amass's name and spoke that name. The Talan said that he no longer goes by that name, and it is Tool now, as he is clanless and free. Inside Tock's mind, he wonders what Tool had meant by free. Free to do what? Lay around in wastelands? Tock asked Tool what happened to Lauren and where they were. Tool responded by saying that they were lost. Tock asked which question that was an answer to. Tool said that it was both. Tock, feeling frustrated, wanted to kick the shit out of the Talan just lying there. Instead, he asked if he could be more specific. Tool answered and said that Lauren had died in Jerujistan 2 months prior, and that they are in a place called Morn, 200 leagues to the south from Jerujistan. Tock found himself not wanting to talk with creatures that have lived over hundreds of thousands of years. He had to remind himself that as much as he wanted to be sarcastic, he had to be serious. He then decided to ask Tool if they were successful in releasing the Jaghut tyrant. Tool said briefly, the Imperial effort to conquer Jerujistan had failed. Tock crossed his arms and said that Tool had been waiting, but waiting for what? Tool replied that she has been away a long time, but now she returns. Tock then asked who has been away a long time. Tool replied that she has taken occupation of the tower. Tock, getting tempted to kick the corpse again, asked if Tool could at least stand while talking to him. Tool arose with an array of creaking bones. Tock gets lost in thoughts about the Talan and how the Emperor loved them. They didn't need to be fed. They could move and go anywhere and do literally anything. Tock, after his thoughts, told Tool that he needed water and food. They both stared at each other for a while. He removed his helmet and asked if they could wait in the tower, because the heat was baking his brain. Tock then begins to think of why he's asking Tool, as if the Talan could help. Tool answers him and tells him where he can find food. Not so much water, though. He goes on to explain that there are plenty of raw materials to repair his bow and to make arrows. Tock tells Tool that he has no idea how to make them, and Tool will have to show him how to. Tool explains that he certainly could, as he still remembers how to use his skills. Tock takes a moment to properly introduce himself, as Lauren never really did. Tool then asks if he was employed with the Claw. Tock explains that he was without the assassin training nor the majory. He adds that he's renounced that role, and all he's seeking to do is rejoin One Arm's host. Tool said that this was a long journey. Tock figured as much, and the sooner he began, the better. He asked how far this glass wasteland stretched. Tool responded that it was 7 leagues, and then beyond that was the Lamatath Plain. Tock wonders if this would lead him to Jerujistan. He asked if Dujek had besieged the city. Tool simply said no, turned his head and said, "She comes." Tock followed Tool's gaze and saw 3 figures heading their direction from the south. Of the 3, only the middle one walked upright. Flanking her on both sides were 2 dogs. One of them appeared slightly wolfish. Since Tool and Tock stood out in the open, it was unlikely that they had gone unnoticed. The 3 did not change their pace as they approached. At a dozen paces, the wolfish dog loped to Tool with its tail wagging. Tock asked if the wolfish dog was an old friend, or if it wanted Tool to toss one of the Talan's bones. Tool did not reply, but just remained silent. Tock wondered to himself if he had offended Tool, and said that he was just joking about the bone comment. Tool said that he was just considering, and explained that the wolfish dog was called an eye, and they actually don't like bones, but prefer warm flesh. Tock grunted and said, "I see." Tool then responded by saying, "It was just me being humorous." Tool rested his hand on the eye's head, and the eye went still. Tool started to answer Tock's questions from earlier about being an old friend. He explains that they adopted these animals into their tribe. It was that, or see them starve, as the Talan were the reason for their starvation. Tak asks why they were responsible, like as in overhunting. He was under the assumption that the Talan were one with nature, with their spirits and rituals. Tool interrupted Tak and asks if Tak mocked him, or Tak's own ignorance. Tool explained that not even the Lichen are at peace. All is a struggle, all is a war of dominance. Those who lose vanish. Tak started to say that they were no different, when Tool interrupted him again and explained that they are different, as they have the choice and the gift of foresight. Though, too often, we come too late in acknowledging these responsibilities. The woman's voice could be heard saying that Baljag awaits the Amasa's command. She said that this was sweet and told the other dog, Garath, to greet the Talan. She met Tak's gaze and smiled and said that Garath, however, would find fun in burying the Talani mass. Tak agreed and said that she spoke Daru, but wore the Talaba of 7 cities. The woman had her own sarcastic comment in response to the statement about Tak himself. Tak, a little bit uncomfortable, introduces himself and Tool. The woman said that this was nice and said that it was hot out here and they should seek shelter in the tower. She told Garath to stop sniffing the undead soldier and told him to awaken the servants. Tak watched as the dog trotted toward the tower. He said out loud that the tower doesn't look very habitable. The woman said that appearances deceive, flashing him a grin. Tak asked if she had a name. Tool answered on her behalf and said that her name was Lady Envy, and she was the daughter of Draconis, who had forged the sword Dragnapur, and was slain by its present wielder, Animander Rake. Draconis had 2 daughters, and he named them Envy and Spite. In disbelief, Tak was in disbelief, as Tool couldn't be serious. Lady Envy could be heard telling Tool if they had met before, and she assumed that she couldn't be recognized by the Talani Mass, as she's only met them twice. Tool gazed at her and said that knowing her did not answer the mystery as to why she had residency here in Morn, and he knows that what she seeks in this place. Mockingly, Lady Envy asked what he meant. As they approached the tower entrance, a leathered, armored, masked figure appeared in the doorway. Tak stopped in his tracks and explained that her servant was a Sagula. Lady Envy seemed surprised by Tak's naming, as she didn't know that this is what they were called. She explains briefly how they became her servants, and this one's name was Sanu. She asked Sanu if his brothers had awakened. Sanu nodded, and Envy told Tak that she found that they protested little and did not speak a lot. Tak asked Envy if Sanu was the only one that spoke with her. Envy recalled that was correct, and asked Tak if this had any significance. Tak explained that the Sagula hierarchy, and it was likely the other 2 only spoke to non-Sagula. Tak said that he had never met one, but had heard plenty of stories. Envy asked Sanu to lead them in, but the Sagula's eyes were staring at Tool. With hackle rising, the eye gave the 2 figures some space. Tak whispered that he thought Sanu was challenging Tool. Envy asked why he would do that. Tak explained that hierarchy is everything, and if it's in doubt, they don't waste any time. Lady Envy told Sanu to behave and gestured him into the room beyond. The Sagula stepped back, but then hesitated before turning and leading the others into the tower. They walked until they reached a room with a round table and a varying array of foods on it. The dog Garath sat nearby. Senu's 2 companions stood around the table in silence. One of them stiffened upon seeing Tool and took 1 step forward. Lady Envy squashed this in a heartbeat and said that there will be no more challenging. Satisfied, she turned to Tak and told him to help himself to quench his hunger and his thirst. Tak found himself staring at one of the Sagula. Lady Envy said that this wasn't wise if a fixed stare represented a challenge. Tak was surprised and said that he had never heard of. Tak never finished his sentence and proceeded towards the table and reached for a jug. Movement exploded behind him as a body skidded across the floor and struck the wall. Tak spun to see Tool with sword in hand facing the remaining 2 Sagula. Sanu lay unconscious 10 paces away. Lady Envy told the other two Segula that since her commands were ignored, she had no choice but to let the Talani Mass defend himself. She turned to Tool and asked if Sanu was dead. Tool explained that he used the flat of his blade and he had no desire to slay her servants. Tak took the moment to ask Lady Envy if she'd like him to pour her a drink. She said that this would be a nice gesture, and it's up to them to show some civility. Tool addressed her and asked what she had uncovered about the rent. She explained that it had been bridged by a mortal soul. She said that the focus of her studies was not on that particular piece, but rather that the warren was, or what the warren was made of, as it's like any other, and it seems rather mechanical. Tool asked if she had examined Kachain Chamali tombs. She said that she had, but only briefly, as they are all empty and probably have been for decades. Tool said, only for decades? Envy goes on to explain that the matron experiences difficulty freeing herself from the constraint, then spends some time recovering from her ordeal before releasing her children. She said that the matron had spent time in a buried city to the northwest, but left things incomplete as the results were not what she wanted, then left the area completely. Envy paused and then continued on to say that she suspects that the matron was the original soul sealing the rent. Another creature resides there now. Tool nodded. Tak, while eating and drinking, had tried to pay attention to the conversation, but was left with a headache at trying to understand it all. Tak said that he needed to head north and asked Lady Envy if she could supply him with things for his journey. He would be forever in her debt. She told Tak to be careful of what he offered. She asked if the names that Tool had spoken about on their walk to the tower meant anything to him. Tak shrugged and said that he could guess that Animander killing her father would hold some bad blood. But Rake was an enemy of the Empire, so therefore they shared in their enemies. Lady Envy said that while there was a need to be allies, what he had said was incorrect. She went on to explain that the food and water she could supply him, but she didn't have any weapons. She said in return, one day she'll call on him for a favor, something small and relatively painless. Could Tak accept something like this? Tak then suddenly lost his appetite, and then said that she had him at a disadvantage. She just smiled. Inside his head, he was thinking about more intimate possibilities, and cursed himself for using the wrong head, blushing as he reached for the cup, and then said that yes, he could agree to those terms. Lady Envy compliments him on his composure, and Tak almost choked on his wine. Inside Tak's head, he wondered if that was her attempt at a flirt. Tool spoke and told Envy that if she intended to find answers about the rent, she wouldn't find it here. Lady Envy asked him to explain. Tool said that he follows an ancient trail, and Morn was just but one stop on that trail, and that trail leads northwestern. She would find those answers amongst those Tool seeks as well. Lady Envy asked if Tool wanted her to accompany him. Tool said that he cares not either way. However, if she were to stay here meddling with the rent, that is a risk itself. Tool also added that her own traveling companions are converging at the same destination. The Panin Domin, both Rake and Brood prepare to wage war against Domin. Tool asked why that wouldn't make her curious. Envy accused Tool that he was no ordinary amass. Tak, barely able to hold his amusement, interjected that Tool had her at an disadvantage. Envy snapped at him, saying that his comments were irrelevant, and she found it unattractive. Tak at that moment, in his mind, wanted to get on his knees and beg for forgiveness. He ended up shrugging that notion down and simply said, "Badly stung, I think." Her expression softened, and she said that she didn't mean to sting him, and that she apologized. She turned to Tool and said that they shall undergo a journey. She told her Segula to prepare. Tool turned to Tak and said that they will make arrows along the way. Tak said that he would enjoy seeing Tool craft these, as it could come in handy for him. They all turned as a loud grunt was heard, as Sanu awoke from being unconscious. Lady Envy brushed close to Tak as she moved towards the doorway, giving him a glance as she said that she was looking forward to this journey. Talk wasn't sure if he should be pleased or terrified by this.
Nice job, man.
Thanks, dude.
I feel like a jackass. I'm gonna nitpick you on one thing.
Sounds good. Do it.
And I feel like this is like a first because honestly, like I never nitpick you. This whole thing you did phenomenal with. And you're gonna be like, Derek, you're such a fucking prick for saying this. You spelt Segula wrong.
Oh, did I?
You did. It's Leh, not Lah. So like in my mind, I pronounced it Segula, not Segula.
Cool. You're a fucking asshole. Yeah.
I know. And also with that, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but when I read it, when they're talking about like the hierarchy thing, Senu, I thought he was like the lowest ranking one, so he was the only one that talked to non-Segula. Maybe I misinterpreted it. That's how I took it when I read it. I'd have to look at it again. But because the other two didn't talk to her, right? So I thought that meant that they were like, they're above it. We're gonna leave, this peasant over here. He can talk to this lady.
Maybe, yeah. You might be right. I'm not gonna. I struggled with this section just from how dense
there's a lot there.
It is with the conversation. So I very well could have mixed those up.
But that's kind of the beauty of us both doing this, right? Like,
right.
We see different things. So I guess somebody more versed, I guess, can correct us here. And it's not a huge sticking point. I don't think either of us are going to take a pie on it. Just telling you how I felt about it. That's all.
No, I'm definitely. I've learned my lesson about taking a pie.
That's always going to be the. That's going to be the phrase, though. Like, right? Like,
not going to take a pie on it.
Yeah, we're not going to take a pie on it.
Look what we started. Hopefully it becomes a thing in the Malazan community. Where maybe we start to see it in discussions. Like, I don't know if I'll take a pie for it, but it would just be cool. The one thing that I want to point out, and I know that in the first time I read this, I thought they were talking about Reyes, but then I had to recall the fact that they were very south of the Gadrobi Hills, and they're in Morn, which is where some of our prologue takes place. And you remember how Pran Cole and Lativa, I think was her name, the female bonecaster, were talking about what had been released when she put the two Jacob children inside of the rent? Yeah. And they were all like, well, we've got plenty of time to worry about it. I think that what Talk is now standing on is whatever creature was released, its barrow, that came out violently, pushed up from the tomb. And violently. At first, I thought they were talking about Reyes, but
I know we talked about that through text, and I was kind of confused as far as like what you're talking about because it just wasn't. It's hard to convey some of the stuff over text message, right?
Right.
So I was kind of like, yeah. So I was like, what? Like, eventually, I got there. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I know what you're talking about. Like, yeah, I agree with you.
Okay.
But at the time, I was like, I don't know what the hell you're like trying to tell me, Justin.
Right. Well, even then, it's like later on, he's talking about there was no telling how much time had passed. And at first, on the first reread, I thought he was talking about himself in the Warren. But he's talking about there was no way of telling how much time had passed since this creature broke out of this barrow. And that Talk's gut told him it had been years, even decades. So
I guess that's where my mind went, too, was the first thing you said, he didn't know how much time had passed when he was in the Warren. I didn't even think about. I know they talk about that it had been maybe decades, but they must have thought it should have been longer or something.
Right. Well, I just kind of wonder if this was something that like Pran Cole just forgot about, being that so much time had passed, or if maybe there was an attempt to come back at that moment that this creature from this exchange in the prologue, if he comes back and confronts it or, what's going on there. So,
right.
It's really cool to have things tie back to the prologue right away. I don't think we've really necessarily had that in the other two books. Like,
I mean, I mean, we kind of always have fellas in the prologue there. I mean, it's not the same as this for sure.
Yeah. It's like almost a continuation, but just like 200,000 years later.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing that I thought was really cool, and just something I never really thought of about the Talani mask before, even though it's just like, hitting me right in the face, is when Talk kind of gets lost in thought about the Talan during the section, kind of when Tool rises or he's having his conversation with Tool, how much the Emperor loved them. And the fact that like they didn't need to be fed, they could move and go anywhere and do anything. Like from like a military perspective, that's fucking genius. Like those are like the perfect soldiers. You don't have to feed them. You don't have to, give them water. And it was just, it's funny. I mean, like again, it's so obvious, right? Like anyone's gonna be like, "Duh, Justin, you fucking dumbass." But it's just one of those things where, like, I never really thought about it that in depthly. Like to me, they're just, skeleton soldiers.
Everybody needs skeleton soldiers.
Hmm. Another thing that I thought was really cool was just I can't I forgot how much I missed Tool as a character, and he just seems like so abstractly wise. And in his conversation, when he's talking to Talk about how they're responsible for the eye and overhunting them, kind of another little nod to the prologue, right? And I really liked what Tool had to say in this, and he describes it as Lichen. Not even the Lichen are at peace. All is a struggle, all is a war of dominance. Those who lose vanish. And I like this, and it was the word Lichen that stood out to me. So I'm like, okay, what exactly is lichen? Like I've heard of it, but what exactly is it?
It's
And
like
so
moss.
it's a combination of fungus and algae that are symbiotic, even though the fungus is more the dominant of the two. And I kind of feel like this is referring to animals in general and a throwback to the eye in the prologue that were stuck in the mud.
It's a good call.
Like that circle of life type theme, Whereas like Talk is just like, well, we're no different. And then Tool's like, yeah, nah, 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 you're a dumbass. They are, because we have a choice and the gift of foresight. The eye are just trying to survive, right?
1 hour, make it to the next hour.
Right. Also, I could have sworn, and I know that we like texted each other about this, but we get confirmation that Animander Rake is the present wielder of Dragnipur. And from what we know about the prologue, is that anybody who holds it has to defeat the present wielder, right? So
Yeah, I was wondering. I wonder if we're thinking the same thing. Like, who had did it go past from Draconis to Rake, or was there somebody between there?
I want to say that Rake, I wouldn't say killed, because I think in Gardens of the Moon, when Haran was inside the sword, there was a hooded figure that didn't know how long he had been there. And I'm wondering if that was Draconis himself.
I bet it probably was.
I mean, I feel like just the level of mystery around that particular character. I mean, my gut is telling me that that has to be Draconis. As well as, and I forget the curses that Calor gave him, but I think that was one of his curses, is that he would be defeated with his own sword.
I think that was the only
Or
curse that
creation.
Draconis had.
Yeah. So I feel like those two things are kind of making sense to me. And it's really cool how we're only at chapter 1 of Memories of Ice, and there's already so many nods to Gardens of the Moon. And I know that this is, again, supposed to be those same characters, that timeline. But, after taking a break from Gardens of the Moon with reading Deadhouse Gates with a whole new set of characters, it's really nice to kind of be thrown these like little bones and little tidbits of things, but yet still kind of making intriguing theories and connections and stuff like that.
Right.
Another thing that I thought was really funny, and this is kind of towards the end of the chapter or end of the section, is the whole comment about if when Lady Envy asks Talk if she could do him a favor for supplying him with stuff, and he's thinking with his dick. If she could ask him if he could agree to a favor, like he's just like, yeah, let's have sex, you know. So I just thought that was really funny. I thought that was a good moment of humor to kind of break up the monotony of this conversation.
I think, and then they circle back around to it where she says, "Oh, it'll be something small and relatively painless." I feel like that's foreshadowing Talk's death.
Think so? You think
I
Talk
kind of
is gonna
feel that
die?
way. Maybe.
Hmm.
I feel like dying is relatively painless. I mean, done correctly or, in a non-brutalized way.
Yeah, sure. Fair enough. So this whole I think that it's interesting that Lady Envy is occupying this tower because she's like studying the rent, right? And she says that it's unfamiliar or, unknown or unlike any other Warren. And then she says that it almost seems mechanical. Did that remind you of anybody?
No.
Well, Icarium is the maker of what?
Time, not time machines, but things that measure time.
Or like mechanical things, right?
Hmm.
Devices pertaining to time. So I don't know. I mean, I know I said it in the prologue, but I have a feeling that this potentially may have to do with something with the Carium's story. I could very well be wrong, but it's
Your guess
just
is as good
weird.
as your guess is better than mine. I didn't
Yeah,
have a guess.
fair enough.
That would be very interesting.
Yeah. But also, like, even with Lady Envy's conversation around the matron, and something to do with a buried city to the northwest of Morn, and she was just satisfied with the progress there, so she just left and abandoned. And how Lady Envy thinks that this is the original soul that sealed the rent.
I think Lady Envy will be an interesting character.
I think so too. And I don't know if you catch it, and we'll get to there. But my other question is Tool, right, is saying that he's following an ancient trail, and Morn was but one stop on that trail, and that trail leads northwestern. So I think that it sounds to me like they're looking for the same thing. And also, were there hints of Tool's quest in Gardens of the Moon? I find
I
it
don't
really
remember.
okay because I find it odd that he was just laying on the ground somewhere south of Jerujistan after what I'm assuming he battled Reyest, right?
But he said he wasn't going to interfere with that. Did he still end up fighting him, though? I don't
He
remember.
did, yeah.
I thought he was looking for his sister. Like, that was what the thing is that he's searching for.
Oh, no, I think he was waiting for Lady Envy.
But he said Morn was one step on his journey or whatever. I think his journey is trying to track down his sister.
Ooh, you're fucking right. So the matron is probably his sister. So I wonder if Fran Cole made her go into the rent in exchange for the two Jaghat children.
I don't know what. I guess I didn't. I felt like it's something. That's something else separate, is what I thought.
Oh, you don't think they're connected?
But I mean, no, because I don't think she went in. I don't think she went into the.
I mean, she didn't seem like she was, she was hell bent against going through their ritual.
But she didn't seem excited about going in there to trade places with the kids.
No, but I feel like Pran kind of made her do it.
But then his Tool's journey would end here.
No, because I'm assuming that her sister was released somehow.
I think whatever was in there was released. The kids are still in there. Sister took off wherever else.
Yeah,
North and west.
that sounds.
We'll see.
You're probably right.
We'll have to see. I don't know. That could be the pie bet, Justin.
Nope. Not at all. Nope. Learned my lesson.
I'd be willing to go in on that one.
Nope, I'm good. I'm gonna say no. I will
All right.
decline.
Okay. All right.
But I mean, God damn it. Watch it. I'm going to end up being right. And
You just never know till you read it.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. But Erickson
Yeah.
does like to keep it mysterious. So,
Yep,
we could both be fucking wrong and we both take pies. But no,
that's true.
I'm good. I think I'll pass on this one.
All right. I just wanted to offer it out there for you.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Maybe I'll get more ballsy in House of Chains, but I think I've learned my lesson for now.
All right.
But I mean, so you're saying that you don't think that they're looking for the same thing?
I mean, I guess they could be.
Because
I think
otherwise, why would she?
Tools-
I think Tool is looking. Yeah, I would agree that it's probably his sister, and I think that along the way, because the Rent and his sister share some type of connection. What specifically that is, who knows? But Lady Envy would also get her answers there. Also, I thought it was interesting how Tool added that her old traveling companions are essentially converging in the same direction.
So then they talk about Animander Rake and Caladan Brood, but my mind went to Cruel and Draconis. But we know Draconis can't be converging anywhere because he's stuck in a sword. Or,
Right.
well, yeah, he's in the sword. But that's where my mind went. I don't know what you thought, I guess, initially.
Well, so what I got was that her old traveling companions, and it says the Pan and Domin. So I think that Lady Envy used to or is still in cahoots with the Panian domain. And so since her old traveling companions are heading northwest, potentially for the same reason or reasons unknown, knowing that the Panian domain is in opposition of Rake and Brood, that would be an ideal time for Lady Envy to maybe get some revenge.
She seems a little too whimsical, I feel like, to be looking for revenge.
She's fast and loose.
She's something for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what to make of her yet.
I don't really know either, but she's definitely got talk with his panties in a bunch. Like, she seems to be flirting with him, but at the same time, maybe not flirting with him. And that's maybe just because we're getting Talk's perspective, But at the end there, she brushes by him as she moves towards the doorway. And I think there is a little bit of a teasy intent here. And also, it's really weird to see Talk so dumb around women before. I mean, he didn't act like this around Adjunct Lorne or even Tattersail, right? And I kind of wonder if maybe she's glamoring him like Pearl did to Kalam in Deadhouse Gates.
I don't know, ma'am. Sorry.
No, it's cool. Those were really the only things that I picked out. Again, it was a very dialogue heavy section, and I left a lot of the deeper conversations out of the summary. I didn't do a lot of summarizing of his thoughts, especially on the ones that I didn't think were relevant to the summary itself. But this last section was definitely very heavy with a lot of themes. Lots of really small stuff to pick out. But I think that I understand it. I think I get what is being put down. So
yeah, you had a lot there, and yeah, it's hard to pick what you want to include and what you're gonna leave out. But I think you did a good job with it. The only other thing I would add, and again, it's just a dumb left field thing, the Segula, I envisioned them as Shy Guys from Mario.
Yep.
That's what I thought of. I don't know why. Just dumb shit like that. I don't know.
It seemed very interesting, and I'm curious to see if Lady Envy, when she means to, when she tells them to prepare their stuff, if that means they're joining them or if they're just going to stay in this tower.
I don't know. I guess. I mean, we can read another chapter here and see what we find out. I did look; it's about 24 pages. So, also one thing I wanted to bitch about, even in Deadhouse Gates and now to this book, I don't think it was this way in Gardens of the Moon. But I don't know how you feel about it, but like the chapter ending in like the middle of the page or like a quarter of the way of the page down, and the next chapter just starting right there bothers me.
It doesn't bother me too much.
I don't like it. I don't know why.
So I work with a couple of librarians. Ever since we started this podcasting journey, every book I bring in, or basically only two now in the last year and a half, I've had my librarian take a look at it, and she just likes to look at the cover art and stuff. And she was there today, and I'm like, "Look, I've started a new book," that goof. And she opened it up, and she's like, "Holy fuck, is this print small?" And I'm like, "Yep."
Yeah, it is.
So I don't know if that's just one of those things where when they did it, how many pages it would have added if they did it in normal font or, in the font from the previous two books.
Yeah, there's definitely noticeably smaller.
Yeah, for sure. I guess speaking of the next chapter, you got any predictions?
I don't yet, because obviously we haven't been introduced to everybody that's going to be in this book. So I excuse me, I don't know. I assume we're going to see some different characters, whether it's characters that we had in Gardens of the Moon or more new characters. I don't know, or maybe it'll be a mix. That's about the only prediction I've got, I guess.
I would agree. I'm hoping for the characters we're already familiar with. It'd be nice to kind of pick up where they've left off. So.
Yeah. Well, should we wrap this up? This seems like kind of a shorter one for us.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking for 2 hours, though. So it's probably on par with our normal episodes, about an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes.
True.
So, yeah, I think we did it justice. I think we did a good job. It's nice to start a book.
Yeah, it is. Something I forgot to mention at the beginning of this is that this is our 70th episode we're recording. I guess I don't necessarily know if it'll be the 70th episode release, just depending on how you decide to do, the Curse episodes and how we want to do that. But yeah, speaking of Curse of the Fallen, if you've enjoyed these Malazan books, check out HC's book. We have a lot of fun doing those episodes, for one, and the book's been really good too. I mean, it's been a nonstop thrill ride so far. So I know we'll have to get back to that at some point here and try to balance that with this book. So check it out. Actually, I think she's got a deal going right now where you can get each book for 99 cents. I assume that's digital, if that's your thing. So we have a lot of fun recording with HC every time we do that book. It's a lot of fun, and I think it comes across that way. You get some different insight into the book, having the author there, getting some behind the scenes footage, so to speak. And she's just a nice person all around to take the time to do this with us. So we definitely want to support her in her writing endeavors. So if you haven't, check out her book. I know some of our listeners and followers have, and I think the reception has been good. And along with that, I guess, if you want to give us a rating and a review, we're not asking for 5 stars. Just be fair with what you really think. Haven't asked for emails or anything like that in a while, so feel free to shoot us a message, give us some feedback, good, bad, whatever. Just get it to us, because at minimum, we're going to respond to it, and I think we try to take everything at face value. We want to do a good job. We want to get better, improve on things. So if there's something you think we can do better, let us know, because it may not be apparent to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, please do us a favor and like and subscribe our YouTube channel.
There you go. I always forget about that. So yeah, check us out there. I know a lot of people use it for that. I don't. I mean, I listen in the car. But I guess if you're around the house, throw it on the TV, whatever, what have you. But check us out.
Yeah, it would be really cool to get to 500 subscribers. and hopefully meet some of those very strict requirements that YouTube has of content creators. And I know we'll get there. I feel like we gain probably about 70-ish subscribers per book. So time will only tell, which is great. I think that we're producing really good stuff. I feel like we found our niche, we found our flow, and it's just crazy to think about like where we are now as to where we are when we began this. Like just all of our muttering and stuttering and ums and ers and
I'm sure we still have that shit, but it's gotten to be more natural now, just talking like this. And I don't know about for you. It might be different, I guess, since I handle like the Twitter side of things, but just like the friends that we've made doing this, it's a blast, and I love it.
yeah, it's I know that we have a while before it ends. I'm not looking forward to that when we've completed our Malazan journey.
We'll just do something different.
Yeah, get into the books that are on our TBR shelf.
Yeah, I might have to get to some of them before then, but we'll find something.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe it's one of those things where we switch it up and I read a book and then we read it together. And I mean, I don't know. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know how fun that would be.
It is. I think you must feel the same way. It is fun going through this journey together, both of us not knowing. And I know like Nate, he's read the series multiple times and he's doing it with his buddy that hasn't read it. And if you haven't listened to him, they have a great time doing it. This just works for us. So that's the only difference. It works for us, and it's nothing against anybody else doing things their way because it works for them. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the content is fresh, especially because 90% of the shit we're wrong on and take pies for. But yeah.
Well, I think I might try to read this chapter tonight. I don't know about you.
Oh, I'm sure I'll get it in because I'm anxious, and then that way I can take it to work and read it again, and then summarize, and then read it again. Oh, yeah. Well,
All right,
sir,
man.
as
Have a
always,
good rest of your Tuesday night. It's Tuesday? I don't even know.
it's Tuesday. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It is Tuesday. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, will do. You as well.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
All right, later, man.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's CNJ's Epic Quest. CNJ's Epic Quest.